Welcome, listeners, to a realm where shadows dance and whispers echo. I'm your host, Rick Clifton, and this is Quills and Chills, the podcast that brings you face to face with the masterminds behind the macabre. In each episode, we journey into the minds of horror writers and filmmakers to uncover the secrets lurking within their tales of terror. From classic tales to modern nightmares, we'll traverse the corridors of the human psyche and unravel the threads of dread that keep us turning the pages or sitting out there in the dark. Welcome to Quills and Chills. Hello and welcome back to Quills and Chills. I'm your host, Rick Clifton, and today I am talking with none other than Gabino Iglesias. Gabino is the author of the Shirley Jackson and Bram Stoker award-winning novel, The Devil Takes You Home. And with that book, he was the first Latino to ever win a Bram Stoker award in the novel category, second ever author and first Latino to win both the Shirley Jackson Award and the Bram Stoker Award for the same book. And I am beyond thrilled and honored to have him here with us today to talk about his latest book, The House of Bone and Rain. Welcome to the show, Gabino.
Thank you for having me, Rick. Just let me say a couple dumb things and then you won't be that excited. So we'll take care of that pretty soon.
Okay, challenge accepted. Let's see if you can do it. Well, before we get into this book, which I'm dying to talk to you about, I would love to get to know a little bit about you. So I was wondering if you can just give us a little bit of a sort of a bio, if you will. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Little bio. I'll try to make it interesting. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, regular family. I don't think I'm exploring any deeply rooted trauma in my books yet. It was all good for a while. And I was not a good kid. I like to make a little bit of mayhem and talk a lot. So they would usually kick me out. I think the teachers that we have working now have learned a lot about dealing with students like me. Back in the old days, you were just sent to the library when they couldn't handle you. So the librarian there was awesome because all librarians are awesome. If you want to find the bad people in any system, find the people messing with librarians, and there you have your answer. And this librarian just let me do whatever I wanted, just as long as I didn't set the thing on fire, just walk around and pick up, whatever, grabs your eye from the shelves. And in that process, I discovered the work of Horacio Quiroga, who wrote really weird, really dark horror. And that was my first love. And I wanted to write. So I think all writers kind of start the same way. You read and it makes you feel things. And then you kind of want to do that. You want to kind of have an effect on people that exact same way. So when I was around, sixth grade probably, I was taking my first English class. And at the end of the thing, the teacher told us, I'm going to need all of you to write a short story. English, you learn language and stuff, but I really have to look at your verbs and, how all that stuff's going. So go ahead and write a short story and we'll go from there. So I wrote a story about a woman in my neighborhood who has a horrifically deformed, very big mutant baby, and she hides the baby in the basement. That's all fiction, obviously, because Puerto Rican houses don't have basements. We don't do that. But this woman somehow had a basement, and she locked the baby in there, and the baby grew and grew and grew, and decided to burst out of the basement and horrifically murdered the entire neighborhood, including the folks at the school. I was in sixth grade, so I didn't know that you had to change the names of the people that you kill in your books. So very long story short, my parents got called. It was the first and last time my father went to a school thing. He said, no, let me take this one. So we went there and the lady spoke about he's got this monster picking up people by the legs and slamming them against the wall, and it's very bloody and horrific. And the lady did her thing. And at the end of the whole spiel, my father looked at her and said, yeah, okay, I see your point, but tell me this, was it well written? And at that point, well, we were both let go, asked to leave. And at that point, it kind of made me click. It clicked in my head. I can do whatever I want as long as it's well written. And I haven't stopped since. It's always the next thing, the next short story, the next novel, the next story.
Oh my God. I love that. I love that so much. So you're my new hero, man. So do you have a sort of favorite scary moment from your childhood that you would like to share?
So I think it's one of those questions that have come up throughout my career, and it always makes me think about different stories, because what I think about as scary for all of us, like I don't know where you grew up, but there are certain places in the U.S. where if you grew up, it was like at X time of day you need to be in the house because the haints are gonna get you. So my grandma had a tiny bathroom in the middle of her hallway in her tiny apartment, and that was the bathroom for the spirits. So she kept it full of lit candles, which is the best thing that you can do inside your house, unsupervised candles. And you weren't supposed to use it. You can wash your hands or use the toilet or take a shower, because the spirits were everywhere and you had to keep them happy. If you drove or walked past the cemetery, you had to pray. Otherwise, you were easy prey, and the bad spirits could attach themselves to you. So I kind of grew up immersed in all of that, and it wasn't scary. It was just part of life. So now when I think about scary stuff, I think about, for example, I moved houses about 6 years ago, and I kept always hearing, when I was alone, I kept hearing very clear, loud footsteps in the second floor. And I always laughed. It was like, of course, the horror writer is going to see and hear.
Right.
But I was always, I think subconsciously, I was convinced that it was all the movies and all the books that I've consumed through the ages. And then right before the pandemic, I got a dog. And then my dog hears it too. So he will be sleeping and then jump up and start growling and start barking at the ceiling. And that kind of made me realize that that was not in my mind. Like, there's footsteps on the second floor where I'm supposed to be alone. And there's always like that moment when they start and you hear those, you're like, oh shit. And then that moment is always a little scary. And then it becomes exciting. Like, if I go up now, what am I going to find? Probably nothing, but I kind of want to go anyway and have my phone ready. So yeah, those are little things that make me remember why we try to make people feel things, right? Like that little moment where you're like, what the fuck was that? I want the books to do that from time to time as well.
Well, you definitely accomplished it in this one, but I have a dog story as well. I'll share real quick with you. So this was years ago. I'll tell you the movie I was watching. Went to bed late, but I was watching this movie. So I'll tell you the time frame. It was Halloween H2O. It had just left theaters. I think it had just come to, I don't know, somehow I was watching it at home. And I went upstairs to go to bed, and in my bedroom at the time, in the place that I was living, it was a wall-to-wall closet, right, that went from one end of the room to the other.
Right.
And my dog was with me, comes up on the bed. She lays down on the bed. I'm about to get in bed. I turn off the light, crawl into bed. I'm maybe there 30 seconds. She stands up, freaked out, barking at the closet, like will not stop. It's 2:00 in the morning, and I'm like, holy hell.
Yes.
And all I could think, I just watched this movie, Halloween. I was like, oh my God, what the hell is going on? I went from my bed to the bathroom, which was easily 10 or 15 feet without touching the floor. It was just,
right.
I don't know what it was. There was nothing there, but it just, she got freaked.
Yes. But that's the thing with dogs and cats. It gives you like a second opinion. So there's nothing there, but when you see the animals panicking, you go like, I know there's nothing there, but maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's like, this is not normal behavior for my beloved pet. So maybe they are trying to protect me from something that my dumb human eyes cannot see.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was later explained to by many people that it was probably a small earthquake that made stuff in the closet move, but I don't know, man. Yeah. She freaked out. I don't know what it is. So.
Could be. Yeah.
But as a kid, I grew up in North Carolina in the South. So for us, it was always the woods,
right?
And I have lots of scary stories from, I could fill your ear one day with scary stories from the woods of North Carolina. So
there's always something in the woods. Yeah,
that's exactly right.
Just go out and whistle at night. See what happens.
No, no, thank you. I'm good. So let's talk about this book, shall we? I absolutely love this book, and I want to say, I'm going to ask you in a second to sort of tell us what the book is about. I loved it, but what I really love too, and what you did is remind me how much I miss Puerto Rico.
Awesome.
And so I have actually started trying to figure out how I'm going to make another trip back there because it's been way too long.
Oh man, keep me posted because it's I'm always trying to find an excuse to head back home. So
yeah, most definitely. But tell us a little bit about the story, about what the story is about. it's kind of a revenge. Well, it's more of an avenge story, I guess, than
Right.
anything. I loved it, but you can do it better than I can. So go.
I'm not sure. Sometimes people will give me a synopsis or an elevator pitch, and I'm like, damn, I wish I'd come up with that. Mulholland, my wonderful publisher, said something along the lines of, and I think it's in the back of the galley. Oh, we think it's Stephen King's Stand By Me with an obsidian dark heart. And I was like, that's a chunk of a poem. I like that.
I love that.
Right? They do a better job than I do on that. No, it's a group of friends. One of them, his mother gets killed, and just as they're about to graduate high school, and well, it's misguided Latino male dumbassness. Clearly, the option here is not to let the world or the authorities handle it. We're going to take matters into our own hands, and we're going to take advantage of the fact that there's a big hurricane coming. The island's going to be, out of commission. There's not going to be any lights. There's not going to be any cops on the street. So it's all good. We can do whatever we want. And they do. They try to get to the bottom of things, and it gets darker than they expected. But once you're too deep, all you can do is like keep on digging, right, and see if you can crawl out the other side. So that's what they do, and a lot of bad things happen in that process.
So I like I said, it just kept building one thing after another. But like you said, it's like at a certain point you reach the point of no return, and the only way out is through. So it was really great. You definitely are exploring lots of themes here about vengeance, about grief, and you're also weaving in some beautiful supernatural elements. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about what inspired all of that.
Yeah, I think every writer, if you're normal, if you're very lucky, then you don't go through that process. But if you're normal, you go through a process of trying to find your voice. Especially if you're a hardcore reader, you have all these wonderful voices in your head, and they don't belong to you. So you have to keep writing until you find the thing that sounds exactly like what's in your head. And for me, the end of that process came with Zero Saints, which was written. I think it was my 4th or 5th book. It was my 3rd published novel. And I knew what I wanted to do then. I sat there. I was struggling to write some dialogue because the lines kept coming to me in Spanish, and it just made sense because the characters were either Puerto Rican or Mexican, and I was struggling with those translations. And I thought, I'm just not gonna translate. And so Zero Saints was the first time where it was just like, I'm not going to translate anything. And it was also the novel where I started writing about my grandma, about the spirits, about syncretism in the Caribbean, about voodoo and santeria and palomayombe and mesa blanca and spirits and ghosts and demons and all that good stuff. And it just felt so right, because crime and horror are they're conjoined twins, right? Like they look a little different, but they share that black noir heart. And they operate sort of like under the same rules. You can tell the worst, most hardcore story ever. If we don't care about your characters, if there's no empathy, we don't care about the story really. So they kind of present the same challenges. So with Zero Saints, I was like, I'm going to mix these two things. The glue, as you will, the glue is going to be magical realism, and I hope it works. I don't know. I still don't know if it did, but they're letting me do it more. So I'm staying there. I want to write about the weird stuff. I want to write about spiritual stuff and all that scary stuff, and the syncretism that I grew immersed in, which as soon as I left, I could see it very clearly. No, I was there. But once I left, I was like, that was awesome. And I try to keep it alive in every single one of my books.
I thought it was, like I said, just beautifully interlaced in this story. And one of the things that really struck me, especially as I got to the end, is I was like, at some point, this story's going to take a turn, right? It starts out of this, and you're going to end up in some strange new world or whatever. But no, you kept that mission, that goal. And we're going to talk about the characters in a minute. But Bimbo's goal, basically, his mission, what was driving him, and all of his, we'll call them brothers. They weren't related, but they're basically a band of brothers, and it just drove through the whole story. It was fantastic. But yet you weaved in all these really great supernatural elements, and I loved that because I was fully expecting a 180 and it didn't happen, and I love that you kept that all the way through. So
appreciate it.
Yeah, really great. One of the comments that sort of seemed to really weigh heavy on me, and my Spanish is terrible, so I'm just going to do the English. You can translate if you
Of
like.
course.
We are surrounded by ghosts.
Yeah.
It really sort of resonated with me, and I got to be careful because I don't want to give spoilers. I love this because you kept that theme throughout the story as well. And our main character here, Gabe, and the story is told through his POV for the most part, keeps that. And okay, there are some. I'm trying to be careful. Sorry, I'm a little. I'm trying to not give too much away, but there are some characters in the story that don't make it through to the end, but yet Gabe was able to keep them with him basically by this sentiment that we are surrounded by ghosts all the time. And that really resonated for me. And it's like, wow, I mean, it's when you've lost people in your life, it's something, it's very meaningful to think about that. So just wanted to mention it. So
awesome. Thank you. And I think they stick around, and we've had this thing about ghosts forever, and we try to, we dress it as horror fiction most of the time, but it's like I'm talking about my grandma here, like almost 20 years after her death. Like, people don't go away.
Right.
You still listen to their music, you read their books, you speak their name, you share stories and memories, and to some degree, doing that in fiction is a little bit more complicated than real life, but it should kind of feel like the same thing. We're completely surrounded by ghosts. Every story is a ghost story, before, during, or after.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit about the characters and the relationship between, there's Gabe and Xavier and Paul and Bimbo and Tavo. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about sort of what connects them and their connection to each other, and how you I'm curious as to how you approach these characters and their dynamics.
So I think there's something that happens in your life, if you're lucky, and the friends that you make between, I don't know, the ages of maybe 6 years old to graduating high school. There's like two groups. Some of those people you're never going to hear from again. You might have them on Facebook, see them from time to time. And then there's usually like a handful. And those individuals, you're like, if you call me tomorrow and you need a kidney, I'm there. Like that. We don't have to talk about it. I'll insult you while giving you my kidney, because that's how we do it, right? Like, of course you had to get sick, you asshole. Like, I'm gonna give you a hard time about it, but I'm there. I'm giving you that kidney. And in this group, they're all very different, and they stick together. And sometimes it's not really clear what the glue is. Like, you don't know why you like someone who's like, let's say, into cars, because I have friends that are into cars. I'm not into cars. I want a car that takes me there and has good AC and a nice,
That's right.
and a nice radio. That's all I ask for. I don't need a sports car or anything. But other things bring us together, and they're friends. You're friends with those people for life. So I wanted to explore that with 5 very different individuals who find themselves at a crossroads, because unless you're going to the same college, the end of high school tends to be the end of a lot of things. You go from your little small pond to a much bigger pond. Some people go straight to work. Some people are starting to have kids. And I think you realize that there's going to be a little bit of push and pull with a lot of your friendships. And in this story, I wanted to go back to that time where it was like, if someone called you up and said, I need to hide a body, are you in? You would be like, let me put my shoes on and pick me up. And
quite literal.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like, I need to go to a place to talk to a guy that I don't know, and I need to bring a weapon with me. Would you back me up? You're like, sure, let me just finish my sandwich, and we're there. And as the story progresses in House of Bone and Rain, you kind of realize the smart thing to do would be to pull back, to to not do some of those things, because sometimes you have friends that they might get you in trouble. So it's like, I'll give you a kidney, but I'm not trying to go to prison, right? So in this case, they're all stupid enough and young enough that it's like, no, we're gonna do this anyway. It's because
I would call it, though, a fierce protectiveness that I absolutely loved. And when you have, I think when you have people like that, I'm very fortunate to have people like that in my life that I would give you a kidney while talking shit about you. I would totally do that. And anybody that knows me knows that's 100% true. But but it's this level of protectiveness and this connection, and it's fierce. I mean, I think
Right.
that's the thing. It's like, it is like, there's no question. And one of the things that really jumped out to me in the story is when you talked about Tavo and his relationship with his father,
Yeah.
and how they sort of came together and had his back, even though
Yeah.
I know I'm not sure. Did he ever find out? I don't know if he ever found out. But if that they did what they did. But
I think at the end he mentions it in the car as, my life was rough and my dad was roughing me up for coming out the closet, and then he stopped, and I kind of put two and two together. Someone paid him a visit and taught him that love is love, right?
Yeah. No, I thought that was really great though, and that really kind of just jumped out at me too. So I thought that was just, it just shows the level of friendship that these guys have. So you also talked a little bit about sort of moving on from those relationships. So I want to talk a little bit about, which is perfect segue into my next question, about Gabe and his internal conflict about staying with his friends and leaving with his girlfriend, who wants to move to the States, you know, in search of a different life. I don't know if it's a better life, but it's a different life for her. And we could talk a little bit about how you did a wonderful job, I thought, of navigating that tension between conflict or the conflict rather between loyalty and desire.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you asked about my bio early on. I was in no hurry to leave home after high school. And I know a lot of people were. I know people who left home at 14, 15, 16. I know that the idea of home doesn't exist for a lot of people, or you have these like abuse and neglect and horrible things. And I get that. I know that's very common. But I also know people that are like 21 and they still live at home. And they're like, why would I leave? Like, my parents are cool. My mom does my laundry. And then I think as soon as you move out, you realize that a lot of the parts of adulting are not just the cool parts, like driving around and you can buy your own booze and all that stuff. It's like, you got to pay bills. And if you don't go to the grocery store, there's no food. So
it doesn't magically appear like it used to. Exactly.
Yeah. So Puerto Rico is one of those places where you see that a lot, because we are a small, tight knit, very nice community. It's always a party. There's always great food. Wherever you live, you're just a stone's throw from the beach, So in a way, it's a messed up country, and we have a lot of problems because being a colony is what it is. And it's also paradise. Like, that's the reason why you're trying to go back, right? Because it's awesome.
Right.
So for example, I live here. I have to stay here for a variety of reasons. There are no publishers other than academic publishers in Puerto Rico. So I couldn't even have a job. I couldn't even do what I do if I was back home. But when you have to leave that first time, it's like, yes, if I go to the US, it's still the land of opportunity. It's the American dream exists. It's walking with a limp, but it's still there. And you're pushed and pulled in both directions. Like, I want to have a better life. I want to explore new things. I want to expand my horizons. I also just want to go to the beach and have very cold beer with my friends and make that my life. Like, if that could be my life, I'd be happy. And if you have a woman or a man who loves you, then it is fantastic. And you don't feel the need to run away from that. Oh, how horrible my life is. I'm at the beach right now. But then also, you don't have any money. You don't have a job. The politics are crumbling. The grid doesn't work. No one has clean water. You don't have power 7 days in a row. So, it's a tough decision to make.
Yeah, exactly. So Bimbo's relentless pursuit of vengeance I don't think this is a spoiler because it's pretty much the first chapter, but he goes on a quest to avenge his mother, who starts off the book having been killed. And I wanted to talk a little bit about not just Bimbo's sort of evolution throughout the story, but I think all of the characters really changed throughout the course of the story. And I think that's important that they do, right? But I wonder if we could talk a little bit about Bimbo's evolution and maybe Gabe's as well.
I think Bimbo, from the very start of the book, and I'm not giving anything away, I think he's just a little bit smarter than everybody else, but not academically. He's smartest in the streets. He comes from that life. He understands how the streets operate. He knows some of his friends don't. So all he says is like, hey, the street has levels. I'm just pointing it out that you're not here, but that might just go over your head a little bit. So he kind of knows what he's doing. He knows. There's a scene very early on where he takes matters into his own hands, and that includes a tire iron, because he saw a threat that nobody else did. He's like, yep. Sometimes you have to make sure that once you interrogate people, they don't tell anybody that you did. And it's a tire iron is a very good tool to ensure that people don't go blabbing after they're done talking to you. So
and he used it very well.
Yeah, and he knew he was confident with it. He'd swung one before. So yeah, he grows in different ways. I think he learns to accept that he's different from his friends, that he's one of those kids that just, he was a part of the system. He grew up in that system. His sister struggling with a substance abuse. Pops was never in the picture. Now mommy's dead, and we're learning things about mom that maybe no one else knew. And I think he grew in a very different way.
I want to talk about sort of the antagonist in the story, and help me with the name. Is it Papalote?
Papalote, yeah.
Okay, great. So Papalote is, I think, who you consider sort of the main antagonist for the most part. Yeah. Feel free to jump in and tell me I'm way wrong on this shit. That's totally fine. But what I love is we actually don't meet him for a very long time in the story, but we see what he's able to do. That is very evident from the beginning. And I love how that's just sort of this thing that you carry through the whole story until we do meet him. And I'm just kind of curious, like, how do you create a character? What was the process for creating that character that's so omnipotent in a way without us ever actually meeting it?
Yeah, I think it's something that you can only do. Your characters have to be very, very interesting, or they have to be powerful. I don't know Jeff Bezos. Maybe you do, but probably you don't know him either. But we know him.
Yeah.
Like if I saw him outside, I would recognize him. Like it's a level of power. I'm not a fan, but I've met 5-year-old kids who know what Tesla is, and they know what Elon Musk. They know who that person is. That's sort of like a very weird power. And in case of people who do bad stuff, there's drug lords that we know their name and we don't know them. Maybe if they escape prison, they show up in the news for a little while and then they vanish again. Every cartel south of the border has someone at the head. Every group in the United States, whether it's Bloods or Crips or, the Mexican mafia on this side of the border, neo-Nazi groups, Aryan Brotherhood, all of them have a powerful or a series of powerful figures at the top. And those individuals don't have to be present for things to go down. They can just give an order and then people die. So it's that Pablo Escobar sort of feeling of like, I don't know this guy, but he feels like it's always there. His men are there. His power is there. People die. We know it's somehow tied to him. And I didn't want him to be surrounded by dogs and holding a gun while having coffee, because I've read those characters before, and I was like, I don't think we need to see him yet. He's a scary, scary boogeyman that we'll just meet down the line. For the meantime, he'll be around like a shadow figure. Like you can almost see him out the corner of your eye. You should be scared and not mess with him. But let's not see him yet. Keep it interesting.
I loved it. It was a great choice. I'm glad you did it.
Thank you.
I think it paid off well, and I thought it was well done. So
appreciate it.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. I want to talk about Puerto Rico's rich cultural and mystical heritage, and how you sort of bring that into play in this story. And can you elaborate on some of the various legends maybe that influence the supernatural elements of this story?
Yeah, I mean, Puerto Rico is, like I said, the epicenter of the world in terms of syncretism. Like, it does. You don't have to do the 23andMe. Every single Puerto Rican is the result of. We had the Taino Indians. We have the Arahuacas. They were there. They had a society. They lived on the island. They were our first nations, and the Spaniards came and tried to enslave them, made everybody sick. Everybody knows that story. Turned Puerto Rico from Boriquen, which is what the Taino called it, to Puerto Rico, which was how they saw it. Hey, it's a rich port. We like it. We're going to stay here. And then we're going to bring in a lot of folks from Africa. So we are the result of that mix. So some of the stuff the Indians believed in is still around. The God that the Spaniards brought and try to shove everybody, that God down their throats, it's still there. And then we got the old gods. We have Palomayombe. We have a lot of things that the Africans brought over. It wasn't just singing and drums. They had their own culture, and they brought it over. Those gods weren't dead just because they were brought over to Puerto Rico. So they stuck around, and now you get that syncretism. Like, I pray to Saint blah, 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 which is a Catholic saint. But what I'm really saying is this other God is behind that. And that's who I'm really praying to. And it's a really beautiful dynamic. And I think it enriches stories. It enriches the country. So I always want to bring a little bit of that. In the case of this novel that I knew I wanted to have a hurricane in it, I'm a fan of literature. More than a writer, I'm just a fan. So when we talk about the Lovecraft mythos, or we talk about the Clive Barker mythos, so the folks that I came up admiring, folks like Paul Tremblay and Josh Malin and all those folks, they have their own thing. Like, places that don't exist that show up in a novel show up in another novel. So I was like, I need to start creating some of my own stuff. And the word that we use for hurricane comes from huracan, which was the bad god for the Taino Indians. That's what they called storms, because it destroyed things. It was dangerous, and the rivers grew. And so I thought, what if they knew about an entity that came with the bad winds? And I just roll with that. And then suddenly there was a lot of creepy dead babies. But that was just me being me. And
yeah, there were.
Yeah. That was just me trying to make it unique. So
you're going back to your roots. It sounds like sixth grade.
Yeah, exactly. It's called vengeance. Now I get.
I loved it. It was fantastic. So, without giving too much away, because again, just being mindful of spoilers, is there a pivotal moment or a scene in the book that you feel the reader should look forward to? And before you answer that, I'm going to tell you mine.
All right.
So it's the moment with Raul. And that whole big fucking twist there that I did not see coming. I should have saw coming. I feel like I should have seen it coming, and it twisted, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then I was just all in, and where it went from there through the rest of it.
Yeah.
Yes. So all in. But.
Now I'm gonna feel like this is a boring answer, because I feel like it's the same one. The big switch is they're going on about business, and they're just talking to a guy, and then suddenly what is that? And then he's like, oh shit, look out the window. There's another layer to this that we were talking about kidnapping someone and getting information, and we just got caught up in the crime part of things. And there's something looking at us from the the house across the street. There's something on the sidewalk that knows what we're doing, and what the hell do we do now? So I feel like that was I feel like every book, especially crime, when you do crime fiction, because horror is different. You can do gothic horror and take your time, but when you're doing crime fiction, it's you should have your foot down, pedal to the metal. But every good story that I read is like, wow, this is going fast. And then at some point, they just flip the turbo. It's like something happens and you're like, oh my God. And then you want to keep reading to figure out this new thing that's moving quickly. So that was my attempt. Like, things are going well, but you've already gotten used to the bloodshed and the kidnapping and the grief and the anger. Here's something wild. Have at it. This dude has something in his neck. Figure it out.
And if I remember correctly, I think it took place over a couple of chapters. I know I reread them 5 times. I was like, okay, I fucking love this twist so much. I kept reading. I was like, let's go. It was fantastic. So
thank you. Appreciate that.
I do want to take a second too to say, as you were talking about sort of how things have to move fast, what I loved in your writing and I've read quite a few books, obviously, but one of the things I love in your writing is how you spend time in the moment. And what I mean by that is, yeah, you've got a scene where Bimbo is using a crowbar to handle business, but you don't do that in like a paragraph. You do that in like a chapter. I mean, it's like you spend this time in that moment, and I loved it because I just felt like it made me feel like I was there. And that's something I always look for in the writing is like, are you really bringing me into this moment? More, not the world's important, but also this moment. And I feel like you did that really well for me. So I love it.
Thank you. I mean, stories.
Sorry, I feel like a fanboy.
No, trust me, it's like 10 days from now, the book's coming out. So my insecurities are flying high. So everything you're saying, I'm grabbing it, putting it in my pocket for later, and it'll get me through the day. No, I think it's people. People make the stories, right? Our characters, the more real they feel, the more we feel the story. And there are times in life when everything's going on around you and you have to sit down and get a coffee, get a drink, smoke a cigarette if that's your thing. Like you need to. That's why so many movies have those shower scenes, right? People are just collecting themselves. You're just
take a breath.
Yes, grounding yourself. Take a deep breath. You might have to kill someone today. Take a deep breath. Hug your mom before you go kill someone, and have a cup of coffee, and then you're ready to go.
There you go. I love it. So, Gabino, who's on your bookshelves these days? Who are you reading? You said you love to read. Yeah. Give me some of your favorite books right now.
Favorite books right now. It's that time of year where I feel like I've read enough of this year to talk about very recent books. I read Wormwood by Leila Martinez. It blew me away. I'm making my way, and I'm going to blank on the title, but I'm slowly making my way through Brian Evanson's new collection. Anything that Brian Evanson writes is just on another level that makes you want to stop writing. I just finished Stephen Graham Jones. I Was a Teenage Slasher. What can we say about Stephen Graham Jones that hasn't been said already? Like the man is a master, and he's like, I heard of a video. It's a blues video where Stevie Ray Vaughan's brother Jimmy Vaughan he introduces B.B. King, and he says he's basically the man we all try to sound like. And I thought that was a really great, intro. I think at some point, for every writer starting now, Stephen Graham Jones is the guy you want to sound like if you're starting out, because he's just doing his own thing. Anything by Silvia Moreno Garcia, she's got a new one coming this year. I'm super excited. So anything that she's written so far should be on your bookshelves. Yeah, and I just spent last weekend in New Hampshire, and I was there with Sean Cosby as my roommate. We spent some time together. I think Sean is absolutely amazing. The other guest of honor was V. Castro. Talk about, the new wave. Highly recommend anything by Haley Piper, Eric LaRocca, Jennifer Hillier. I could go on for
Damn, I've got a whole list of recommendations here. I'm going to dive in. So it's fantastic. I love to ask that question because it always helps me figure out what I'm going to tackle next and go from there.
Yeah, instead of reaching blindly into the pile.
Exactly. So. Well, the book is called House of Bone and Rain. It is everywhere August 6th. And so as I always like to say here at Quills and Chills, please go support your local bookstores.
Yes.
And Gabino, how can our audience find you on social media?
I'm usually on Twitter talking books and trying very hard to stay away from politics, but I can't because everything's political. So I'm on Twitter. I've been trying to learn TikTok. My videos look like garbage because I don't have editing skills yet, but I'm learning. For example, now I know that whenever I show a few books, I have to switch the camera angle around so you don't struggle to read the titles. Yeah, because it's mirrored. So I share my photography on Instagram. It's all the same. The good thing about having a name like Gabino Iglesias is like there's not a lot of us out there, so you can find me fairly easily.
I'll throw it up on the screen for you too. But I will say I follow you on Twitter, and I love your message on Twitter. Your voice on Twitter is great. It's very positive. It's very upbeat. And Twitter is not the easiest place to be sometimes.
No, it's not.
Yes. So but I will say if you go follow his Twitter because you will not regret it. He's great, upbeat, positive outlooks messages. The one that got me, I think it was I saw it yesterday. I don't know when you posted it. It was like, just go write it. And I was like, I love that so much. It was perfect. It was perfect. So
yeah, we all need that little push from time to time.
Exactly. So, okay, thank you so much for joining me today. I know you're traveling, so I appreciate your time. So
I appreciate yours, man, and your kind words too. They do mean a lot.
all right, perfect. Sorry, I was like, okay, Rick, dial it back. You're fanboying a little bit with your gushing. So
I'll let you know via email if I need another boost. Like, oh my God, I'm dying.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Done. Done and done. All right.
Appreciate it, man.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you next time. Gabino, don't go anywhere. Hang out 1 second. And see you guys next time. Thanks for joining me on another episode of Quills and Chills. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the mysterious and the haunted. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to support us by subscribing on your preferred podcast platform and leaving us a rating or review, because your feedback helps keep those chills running down both our spines. And feel free to share the show with your favorite fellow horror enthusiasts. Also, if you guys have any spooky stories, strange encounters, or paranormal experiences of your own, I'd love to hear them. Reach out to me on social media or email me at quillsandchillspodcast@gmail.com. Who knows? Your story might end up on a very special episode. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I will see you back here next time on Quills and Chills. Bye, y'all.